your questions?
Yeah, let's try to get most of the burning questions out of the way before we go through.
All right, I have only one, which is based upon my first impression when I first came into the order, and which has changed in its quality and depth over the years, which I won't get into, but what is the policy on the priestess being robed or unrobed, what you will, at the time the veil is finally opened by the priest?
The policy on that is that the script calls for the priestess to completely disrobe behind the veil while the priest is making those speeches. That is policy. The priestess is supposed to be that. Her option is to whether she puts her robe back on or not before the veil is open. And what does it say? This is the savage country clause. Whether or not it's a savage country out there is a decision to be made solely by the priestess.
And it's really a pressure that the priestess should never feel one way or the other. You might go into, you start the tune with one expectation and do the complete other one. It's not, it's up to you as priestess.
And the deacon and the priest or anybody else really have nothing to say about it.
May I add something to that? I think that in the Midwest, that's usually what we do, is how the priestess feels, that's what she does. But one of the main problems I've encountered is the veils are very important, because if you can see through them, she doesn't have a choice.
Right.
And I know that some places have translucent veils, and then you really feel silly putting your robe back on. So if you are making new veils or whatever, make sure that you can't see through them, because that will help the priestess out quite a bit.
Excellent point. We ran into that in Australia when we were trying to get their Gnostic Mass practice set up down in Sydney. They had been told they had to have translucent veils. We finally told them that no, you can have an opaque veil. All their priestesses went, ah.
Have you seen the Mass? I have yet to see the Mass done with the priestess re-robes. Have you seen it done? Does it make much of a difference?
I've done it.
I've done it.
Yeah, I've done it.
Do you think do you notice it makes any difference in the mood of the Mass or anything?
I really haven't.
I think as priestess, at least in my experience, I'm looking so I can see,
Yeah.
there is a difference. There really is. But it depends on your congregation, and a lot of times there might be someone that you feel uncomfortable about in the congregation, and you don't want to be so vulnerable. So it's
Tomorrow's Mass is an open Mass.
right. So okay, the policy we have here is if everyone is initiates, usually the priestess will stay unrobed. But then again, it's still her choice. But if there's people that are non-initiates, we re-robe.
That's, in our experience of visiting, that's also the policy that the Northern California bodies work by. If it's an initiate mass, then the question of re-robing is never brought up. But if it's an open mass where there are non-initiates present, they tend to always re-robe prior to the veil opening. And
Well,
I've attended 3 masses out there, and 2 were private and were initiatory, and 1 was not. And in the case of the public mass, she did re-robe behind the veil before it was opened again.
yeah, I don't think that's a policy there, because recently there was a photograph in a local Berkeley newspaper of a Thelema Lodge Mass where actually in the newspaper, taken by a reporter who was not a member of the order, and the priestess was naked.
What happened? What happened? Uproar?
It's
Probably
Berkeley.
not. It's
Good press, right?
And I hate to say it, the ego has also come into play, at least on my behalf. I'm not speaking for anybody else. Gravity has not been kind to me. I robe again, I'm sorry. And one of the people, when I visited, she was in her 60s, and she robed again because of gravity. So.
It's strictly up to the priestess. And I might also mention that it was at Caliphate Lodge, the priestess always re-robed. That was one thing that I was asked by some people from that time period to correct the notion that, in my history section on here, that was originally promulgated by Francis King, that it was the standard practice of Agape Lodge for Wilfred Smith to perform cunnilingus during the Gnostic Mass. This did not ever happen.
Why not?